Hey, welcome to Audio listeners. We're all about breaking down the best ideas from great books.
Want to learn from all those amazing books out there, but you just can't find the time?
That's exactly what we do. We pull the key ideas from the best books on growth and motivation.
So you can boost your personal growth, gain powerful knowledge, and find that daily motivation for free.
Here's the cool part. Every book is a complete playlist, so you can learn from start to finish.
So go check out the playlist section. You're going to find something that helps for sure.
And hey, if you like what we're doing, do us a favor and hit that like button.
You're not going to want to miss what's next, so make sure you subscribe for the latest books.
And one last thing, what book should we cover next? Let us know right down in the comments.
Let's talk about a pretty wild idea today. It's this concept that real, lasting wealth isn't something you just earn or save up for. It's something you invent. We're going to dig into how the wealthy seem to literally create money, not by working harder, but by thinking in a completely different way.
And this quote, it's basically the key that unlocks this entire mindset. It's such a simple but powerful idea, and it goes against so much of what we're taught about success. It's telling us that audacity, not just being book smart, is the real currency. So what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, let's look at two totally different stories. On one hand, you've got a guy like Alexander Graham Bell. So Western Union offers him $100,000 for his telephone patent, calls his price ridiculous, and he walks away. He took a bold risk, and it led to a multi-billion-dollar industry. On the other hand, you have a 45-year-old manager. He gets downsized, and he is terrified. He's begging for his old job back, paralyzed by the fear of losing his house. See, it's the same kind of financial pressure, right? But the outcomes? Night and day. One guy invents a new future. The other is desperately trying to hold on to a past that's already gone. Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll explore why the bold so often leapfrog the smart. Then we're going to get personal and pinpoint the single biggest thing that holds most people back, and it is probably not what you're thinking. After that, we'll get into the new rules of the game for wealth today. From there, we'll redefine what financial intelligence actually means, and finally, we'll get to the heart of it all, how the rich seem to just invent money out of thin air. All right, let's dive right into that first big idea. Section 1, the bold get ahead. We're really going to dig into why having guts so often beats having good grades when you step out into the real world. You know, the second we leave school, we learn a hard lesson. The real world plays by a completely different set of rules. Success isn't about memorizing the right answers anymore. It's about having the courage to act, even when you don't have all the information. It takes guts, it takes daring, it takes tenacity, all the things that, just don't show up on a report card. And that leads to a really, really critical question. The source material claims that every single one of us has this huge well of potential, this kind of personal genius inside. So if that's true, what's stopping us? What's the one thing that consistently gets in our own way? And that brings us right to Section 2, your biggest obstacle. We're about to put our finger on that single greatest barrier that keeps our own genius locked up. And seriously, the answer might surprise you. It's not because we don't know enough. I mean, come on, we live in the information age. Technical knowledge is everywhere. You can learn how to do pretty much anything with a few clicks. So no, the problem isn't a lack of information. The real obstacle? It's internal. It's that little voice of self-doubt inside all of our heads. It's the fear of failing, the fear of looking stupid, the fear of taking a risk and just being flat out wrong. That is the real bottleneck to our potential. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It's so direct. Excessive fear and self-doubt are the greatest detractors of our personal genius. I mean, think about it. You can know exactly what to do, you can see a golden opportunity right in front of you, but if you don't have the guts to act on it, all that knowledge is basically worthless. So, okay, if overcoming fear is the internal battle, what's going on externally that makes this so urgent right now? That brings us to Section 3, the new rules of wealth. Because the world has fundamentally changed, and holding on to old ideas isn't just unhelpful, it's a huge liability. Just think about how wealth has evolved. Go back 300 years, it was all about land. If you owned the land, you had the wealth. Then, fast forward to the industrial age, and it was all about factories. Both were physical, tangible things you could touch. But today, wealth is information. It's intangible. It moves at the speed of light, and it doesn't care about borders. That changes everything. And this is the part you really have to get for today's world. In an economy that moves this fast, old ideas, like the old mantra of work hard for a safe, secure job, aren't just outdated. They can be a massive liability.
Just like the quote says, an idea that was an asset yesterday can become your biggest weakness today. Because, well, yesterday is gone. So if old ideas are a liability, what's the new asset we need? Well, that brings us to Section 4, financial intelligence. And listen, this is not about being a math genius or knowing a bunch of stock formulas. It's something way more creative. Our source gives this fantastic example of a woman playing a financial board game. At first, she gets really angry and frustrated, saying the game is silly and ridiculous. But later, after she calms down, she has this aha moment. She realizes the game was like a perfect mirror. It was showing her exactly how she behaved in real life, how she avoided numbers, how she wasn't really aware of her family's finances. Games, just like life, are instant feedback systems. They show us who we really are. And that woman's realization, that gets to the absolute core of financial intelligence. It's not about knowing the numbers perfectly. It's about creativity. It's your ability to look at a financial problem and invent multiple solutions. It's about having more options than just the default path of work hard, save money, and borrow from the bank. And this whole idea of creating options brings us to our final, and honestly, our most powerful section. This is the one that ties it all together. Section 5, how the rich invent money. This is the ultimate mindset shift. This is the fundamental difference. It's so simple. Most of us are trained to be employees in a system, right? We trade our time and our skills for a paycheck. We work for money. But the rich, they operate on a totally different principle. They make money. But hang on, that sounds impossible, doesn't it? I mean, we think of money as a real thing. Bills in your wallet, numbers in your bank account. How can somebody just make it? Well, here it is. Here's the secret. Money isn't actually real. It's an idea. It's a system built on trust and agreement. And here's the kicker. If money is just an idea, then it can be created from nothing more than another idea, as long as it's backed by confidence and boldness. And that brings us right back to the beginning. If money is just an idea, then the single most powerful asset on this entire planet is the one thing that we all have, our mind. Because that's the factory where ideas are made. And when you train it well, it can generate incredible wealth from creativity, from seeing opportunities that others miss, and from making bold agreements, seemingly out of thin air. But that same untrained mind can also create crippling poverty by clinging to fear and old, outdated ideas. So ultimately, the final question isn't about the economy or your job. It's about you. Your mind is your single greatest asset. So, how will you choose to train it?
Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a really powerful idea today. What if the single most important tool for building wealth isn't actually in your bank account, but it's inside your head?
And this quote right here, it's really the heart of everything we're talking about today. The source material argues that we're so often focused on the wrong things, earning more, saving more. But the real game changer, the thing that unlocks massive wealth, is training your mind. It's all about developing your financial intelligence.
So, what does it actually mean to train your mind for wealth? And how does this way of thinking completely challenge the advice we've all been told our entire lives? You know the one, just work hard and save your money.
Okay, so think of finance as the biggest game in the entire world. But here's the thing, the rules have changed. The old school strategy of just clocking in, working hard, and saving isn't really enough to win anymore. The real advantage, the cheat code if you will, comes from boosting your financial IQ so you can understand the new rules of how money really works.
All right, let's talk about the single most common piece of financial advice you have ever heard. Save your money. Well, our source argues that this supposedly safe advice is actually a trap. It's one that can make you totally blind to much, much bigger opportunities.
So picture this. It's the early 1990s. The economy in Phoenix, Arizona is just in terrible shape. And a financial planner gets on TV and gives this very safe, very conventional advice. I mean, it sounds sensible, right? Who could argue with that?
And here's where it gets really interesting. Look, the source isn't saying saving money is a bad thing. Of course not. But it argues that having a saver's mindset can give you financial tunnel vision. When you're so focused on squirreling away small amounts of money, you might completely miss the huge investment opportunities that are unfolding right in front of your face, like the one we're about to look at. So while pretty much everyone else was being told to save, 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 the author did the exact opposite. They went looking for investments. And this case study, from that exact same economic downturn in Phoenix, perfectly shows the massive difference in thinking.
Now, I know this might look a little complicated, but trust me, the logic is actually pretty simple. So here's how it went down. In a terrible market, a house that was worth 75 grand was being sold for just 20,000. The author borrowed a small $2,000 down payment, bought the house, and then immediately put an ad in the paper to sell it for 60 grand with zero money down for the new buyer. It sold in minutes. That created a $40,000 asset out of thin air in the form of a promissory note, basically an IOU from the new buyer.
But here's the part that is just absolutely mind-blowing: the time it took. This entire deal, which literally created a $40,000 asset from nothing, took a grand total of just 5 hours of work. 5 hours. So how is that even possible? How can you just invent $40,000 in 5 hours? Well, to get that, we need to take a quick look at the financial mechanics playing out behind the scenes. This diagram here is the key to the whole thing. See, that $40,000 IOU, it's not just a one-time profit. No, it becomes a brand new asset. It sits right here in the asset column, and it starts generating passive income, in this case, $4,000 a year. And because of how it's structured, that income isn't taxed like a regular paycheck. Money is literally flowing from the asset column right into the income column. Now let's compare that to the saver's path, the one most of us are on. You get income from your job and, bam, before you even get to touch it, the government takes a huge slice for taxes. It's only the scraps, what's left over, that can be slowly trickled into a savings account. The difference in how the money flows, it's just night and day. And get this wasn't some lucky one-off deal. By just doing this same kind of thing 6 more times, all in their spare time, by the way, the author built an asset portfolio worth over $190,000. So now, this portfolio of assets was kicking off about $19,000 a year in passive income. And because it was all structured through a corporation, a lot of that income could be spent on legitimate pre-tax business expenses, which protected it even more from taxes. So what this all boils down to is a final head-to-head comparison between 2 totally different ways of thinking about money. And when you lay it all out side by side like this, the difference is just staggering. I mean, look at it. The saver works hard, gets taxed, saves the leftovers, and then gets taxed again on the interest. The investor, on the other hand, uses their financial smarts to create assets that have huge tax advantages. But the most shocking difference? It's the time. To save $190,000 would take the average person decades. To create it with these deals, it took about 30 hours total.
And that right there brings us to the real hidden cost in all of this. It's not just about the money. We forget that the most valuable, non-renewable resource that you have, that any of us has, is our time.
So the crucial question that the source leaves us with is this: which path actually sounds harder? Working hard for decades, paying massive taxes, and trying to save whatever little bit is left over, or investing a little time to develop your financial intelligence so you can harness the power of your own mind? It's a pretty powerful thought to end on, isn't it?
All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful idea from the Rich Dad series, something called financial intelligence. Okay, so this quote, "This is everything." The core idea is that real wealth isn't built on what you can physically see, but on how your mind is trained to spot opportunities and value where pretty much nobody else does. And that's really what this is all about, developing that special kind of vision. The author calls it financial intelligence. You can think of it as the skill of seeing opportunities that are just hiding there in plain sight. So get this. The big insight here is that things we're told to fear, like a market crash or a recession, they're not just scary events to survive. For people with financial intelligence, they are massive opportunities. It's about taking life's biggest lemons and knowing how to turn them into millions. But look, before you can build anything that's going to last, you've got to have a solid foundation, right? Well, this philosophy argues that foundation is built on 4 key pillars of knowledge. And here they are. First, accounting. You just got to know how to read the numbers. Then investing. That's the art of making your money make more money. Third, understanding markets. Good old supply and demand. And finally, the law. Knowing the rules of the game. Now, the really cool part is how they all fit together. Accounting lets you see the deal. Investing gives you the plan. The market tells you when to move. And the law? That's how you protect your money and make it grow even faster. It's a complete toolkit. Okay, so let's get out of the theory and look at how this plays out in the real world. This isn't just an idea. We're going to walk through a real-life example of how a tiny investment can absolutely snowball into a fortune just by using these principles. So where does this huge journey start? Believe it or not, right here. Not with some massive inheritance, not a lottery ticket, but with a single down payment of just $5,000. That's it. Now check this out. In 1989, the market's down, so they buy a little house for 45 grand. Just 1 year later, the market bounces back, and they sell it for 95,000. Now, instead of just pocketing the cash, they roll those profits into a 12-unit apartment building. 2 years after that, they sell that for almost $500,000. Then they take that money and buy a 30-unit building. And just a few years later, bam, an offer for $1.2 million. You see the pattern, right? Each step is a level up, but there was a secret sauce that made it all happen so fast. And here it is. This was the absolute game changer. Pillar number 4, the law. They used a legal tool called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange. In simple terms, this let them move all the profits from one sale directly into the next, bigger purchase, without paying capital gains taxes each time. That meant every single dollar stayed in the game, working for them, letting them scale up way, way faster. Okay, that real estate strategy seems pretty methodical. But what about the really risky stuff? The book also talks about turning something like $25,000 into $1 million in under a year with small cap stocks. I mean, come on, isn't that just straight up gambling? Well, the answer in the book is pretty direct. It's not gambling if you know what you're doing. It's only gambling if you're just tossing money at a deal and crossing your fingers. So the difference isn't the investment itself. It's the investor. It's you. It's your knowledge. And this idea leads us to a really important fork in the road. According to the book, there are basically 2 types of investors out there. So the big question is, are you a buyer or are you a creator? So on one side, you have your packaged buyer. This is most people, right? You go to a broker, you buy a mutual fund, a REIT. It's clean, simple, it's off the shelf. But then you've got the investment creator. This is the professional. This is the person who doesn't just buy a deal, they build it from the ground up. And that's where the truly massive wins are found. So if you want to be that second type of investor, that creator, you need to master 3 very specific skills. These are the things that separate the pros from everyone else. So what are they? First, you have to find an opportunity that literally everyone else overlooked. Second, you got to raise the money to make it happen. And that often means not going to a bank. And third, you need to organize smart people around you to pull it all off. Let's really dig into that first one for a second, because finding that hidden gem, well, that's where all the magic starts. It all starts with seeing potential where other people just see a total mess. And here's a great little story. A friend of the author bought this old, rundown house. I mean, it looked spooky. All his friends were like, dude, why in the world did you buy that money pit? But here's the thing. He saw something they didn't. The house itself wasn't the prize. The property came with 4 extra empty lots. And he didn't spot that just by driving by. He saw it with his mind because he did his homework down at the title company. And what did that little piece of hidden knowledge get him? $75,000 in profit. In just 2 months, all he did was tear down the crappy house and sell the 5 separate lots to a builder for 3 times what he originally paid for the whole thing. So you see, the real estate snowball, the high-risk stocks, this rundown house, they're all pointing to the exact same thing. To the one asset that truly matters above all else. Look, this whole thing isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. Building your financial intelligence is about cultivating wisdom that lasts a lifetime. It's what allows you to manage risk instead of just running away from it. It's about learning from failure, and ultimately, it's what allows you to actually get excited about market changes instead of fearing them. Which brings us to the most crucial point of all. Your house, your stocks, your business, all of it can disappear. But what's in your head? Your financial education, that can never, ever be taken from you. That is your greatest wealth. And what you don't know, well, that is and always will be your greatest risk. So when you really think about it, the journey to wealth doesn't start with finding money. It starts with a simple decision, a decision to learn, which leaves us with just one question for you. What will you learn next?